Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It's Friday, May 3rd. Time for another show, May 3rd, 2024, in case you forgot what year it is. And I forgot to tell you what year it is, and I hope you're not relying on me to remind you what year it is, because who knows what may happen. Friday, May 3rd, that leaves us without May the 4th on the air. So Star Wars Day tomorrow, and we don't get a chance to celebrate, though, you know, it's not like we ever had any sort of extravaganza planned or anything like that. But, well, I don't know. It's always fun to be able to start the show with some observation of something happening on that particular day. But we'll miss out on that. But hey, weekend. It's a fair trade, I think. Lots to go over here, and might be a good day to try and dig up some of the things that have been sitting around for a little while. Long reads, things that we couldn't quite connect to the flow of the show on any given day. But hey, who knows? It's also another day, I guess, back in court for Trump, and still falling asleep pretty regularly in the process of his trial, even though there's actual witness testimony going on at this point, which you would think, since a lot of it talks about him, he would find very interesting. But I guess some of the boring stuff, laying the foundation for evidence, it's going to be entered into the record, etc., doesn't interest him, and he continues to doze off. I guess the big development that reached my ears anyway, from yesterday's proceedings, is that just like in voir dire, I don't know whether, I really have no idea whether Trump's attorneys see this coming or not. Todd Blanche is turning into a pool of melted wax at this point. He's sacrificed everything, which is fine because he deserves to have sacrificed and lost everything. But like every other lawyer who's agreed to represent Trump in the last, I don't know, well, certainly since he's been president, he's found himself embarrassed, his reputation in tatters, and finds himself forced to do things in front of the judge that, there's pretty thorough training all up until this point that do not do these things in front of judges. Don't fight the judge. Don't insult the judge. There can be sometimes you can build a foundation upon which you can have some spirited debate, but certainly personal insults or just plain frustrating the judge at every turn, not a wise strategy, and Trump is insisting on engaging on it. And there was, I forget who I saw mentioning it the other day on social media, just saying once again that at the start of this trial there was some chatter that, well, this time Trump has got a decent lawyer. He's got himself a good lawyer with a real reputation and a real practice, and he's not going to engage in these theatrics and this stupid stuff that's going to blow the case for him. And they did. It was rather remarkable. I don't know if there was a whole article attached to it or not, but I mean, what would be the use, really? I mean, you've all seen him melt down in real time in front of everybody's face. So anyway, this time around, yesterday, that is, like in voir dire, the Trump team sort of walked into, it appears unawares, into a situation in which they were asked to read onto the record or to tell the court out loud exactly what were the attacks on social media being lodged against Trump that they objected to. As with examining the jurors, potential jurors to be on the jury, well, this one has all sorts of anti-Trump material all over their social media profile. Well, what do you mean anti-Trump? Well, it's insulting to my client. Well, exactly how? You got to tell me. I mean, some things will be disqualifying and some things won't. And then they had to read out all of these attacks. There was the one, I'm dumb as F one, the meme, which was pretty funny and I thought was going to be hard to top. And I don't know. I mean, this one's a pretty close second, if not a topper, I guess. The fact that it comes from Michael Cohen is, I don't know whether that adds to it or takes away from it. he's going to be a witness in the case. And of course, this came in the context of Trump defending himself, or his lawyers defending him, during contempt of court proceedings that Greg told us were going on yesterday. And Judge Merchan basically saying, all right, well, there's, some 10, 15 instances in which we allege you've violated the gag order, and we need to examine those things and decide what to do about them. Then there's the back and forth about whether or not we've reached the stage at which Trump would be sent to jail for it. I just don't know if we're ever going to reach that stage. But at any rate, Trump's attorneys are standing up there saying, well, we need to be able to respond. This gag order is wrong. It's unconstitutional. It deprives my client of his rights. He's running for president as well. Which is his roundabout way of saying, well, that means he has more rights than other Americans, which is not supposed to be true, but that's the whole basis of this trial and the pleadings, before the Supreme Court, insisting that he has absolute immunity, et cetera, et cetera. But, anyway, so that leads the court to ask, okay, well, what is it that you think you need to fight back against? And, again, I guess probably they led with some vagaries. Well, there's some personal attacks being launched against my client in social media, people calling him names, people saying untrue things about him, and he's running for president. He needs to be able to answer. And basically the same back and forth, which I assume, I really haven't read any of the transcript, but I assume that Todd Blanche is fighting hard to not have to actually read these things out loud because, of course, in the end, well, golly, it was, well, you know what? What can I do here? You've probably seen it, so you know what I'm talking about. I put aside, as a matter of fact, over at Daily Kos, somebody wrote up a diary in which they have the CNN news clip of Jake Tapper having to deal with this insanity. And I guess we should just let him read it, and then we can blame it on him, because it's going to require some bleeping at some point. So here's the thing. So again, he's standing up before the court saying, I have to be able to respond. And the court saying, why do you have to be able to respond? Exactly what's going on here that you need to respond to. And he's forced to read out loud, well, here's the thing that's bothering me. Oh, look at this. There's a pop-up here. This is interesting. Is this a pop-up with no X out window? It's a donate to Joe Biden thing. So maybe via Act Blue. What happens if I just click on it and then just leave? I guess I could do that. I don't encourage you to do that. I want you to go and donate. But just checking to see what would happen. All right, let's see. Is the video embedded here? All right, yeah, and I guess I can play it too. So hold on a second. All right, so the question is, well, Michael Cohen, he's called him some names. I object to that. He has to be able to answer. Well, what is this thing that he's said that's so terrible that you have to answer? And that forces them to tell everybody what it is. And well, and then what's even funnier, I guess, if you haven't heard it, then it's still going to be hilarious. But even if you have, then CNN and the serious news channels, allegedly serious news channels, have got to tell you what's going on. And I guess here it is. Let's see. All right, let's see if I can. Can I turn the volume on this up? Because it's important. This is important news. Let's see. Where's our. Oh, yeah. Okay. So we'll crank up the volume a bit there and start over. This is somebody who can't control themselves laughing along, I think, with the television news. Because, I don't know, they can't believe it. I'm sure they rewound their TiVo and then turned it on and couldn't help snickering. But, okay, let's see. Jake Tapper can take it away here. Oh, no, we're going to wait and play something stupid? All right. Oh, it's going to circle around and decide that it thinks it doesn't know how to play this thing. All right, one more try here. See if this works. No. Terrific. Oh, thanks so much. Boy, Trump causes a lot of problems for us here on the show. All right, well, one more attempt at trying. Maybe we can reload the entire page and try again. Here we go.
Update ahead of time. But
take it away,
Blanche,
Jake.
Todd Blanche, the Trump attorney, is specifically reading a post that Michael Cohen made on Twitter on April 22nd, in which he refers to Donald Trump as Von ShitzinPants. That is a factual record that I'm bringing before you. This is in the court transcript. Von ShitzinPants. Blanche also said
he says it again.
There are repeated attacks on Trump and his candidacy on Cohen's podcast and TikTok account. Dana Bash, I know you want to weigh in on Von ShitzinPants.
So they're even having fun with it on set, and apparently it caused a little laughter to break out right in the courtroom. That's fantastic. I don't know whether Trump was awake for that or not, but that's pretty good. I mean, just in terms of, it's not a super creative nickname, but it's fun and it's topical. And the point is that once again, the Trump lawyers have walked into a situation in which everybody has got to sit there and wait and laugh in the face of Donald Trump, ultra strong man, very strongly laughing in his face. And, meanwhile, they have to spin it that much harder, I guess, over at Fox News. They're insisting still that his falling asleep in the trial is a power move to show them that he doesn't care, and he thinks that the whole proceeding is illegitimate, et cetera, et cetera. But it's hard to think how you get by, how you get past the insult of having your own lawyer have to stand there and call you Von. Well, can we say it? Do we have to try to engineer some sort of? I don't know. If we let take Tapper get away with it, but Von, we'll use our horn. Von in pants. That's very dumb sounding. Anyway, so that's a good way of wrapping up the week. Who knows what they're going to do now? And I guess really everybody, all witnesses, should be, I don't know whether it's a great trial strategy or not, but I guess all the witnesses who've already done it should be using social media and forcing Donald Trump's lawyers to read their insults aloud on the record in court. It's an exciting new strategy. All right, let's see. A couple of other things, mostly about other stuff that we have put aside. The campus protests continue, of course. Although some of them shutting down, some of them by force, with the authorities coming by and sweeping through the camp and wrapping everything up and arresting students. Others by agreement after negotiation with the college or university authorities, in which very often there are promises of future consideration by the Board of Trustees or whatever the governing body is to consider the question of divestment from Israel, though, again, how that's going to be defined, I don't know. I think the students are actually pretty clear-eyed about it in terms of most of these statements surrounding the agreement say there's a lot more work to be done, and, of course, we reserve the right to resume protest if we don't get satisfaction from this. But for now, we're willing to decamp and allow final exams and commencement exercises to go ahead. Some of us will be back next year. If we don't get a satisfactory answer out of the board, we'll be right back here. Something I guess we could spend a moment or two on just to remind everybody. I did see via social media this morning a popular Blue Sky participant, whose name I think we've called before on the show, the Go Like Hell Machine at Blue Sky, saying in commentary about this included morning consult piece about polling on the protests, and basically making the point that outside of social media, outside of our little Twitter Blue Sky world, not only is this not necessarily an obsession for people about what's going on in the news, on those campuses in particular, but it's not viewed nearly in the same light. As he puts it here, this doesn't make the polls accurate, and it doesn't mean that anyone is right about this. This is a very subjective issue, but like 47% to 30% in favor of banning campus protests, like just regardless of whether or not you are on one side or another, just banning protest entirely, or at least banning pro-Palestinian protest. That's a very clear majority. I mean, it's actually, of course, a plurality, but a very solid plurality. and is an entire universe away from what we're seeing on Blue Sky or Twitter. Included in here is the link to this morning consult, but also another of his previous tweets, which says, I'm also worried that a lot of journalists and would-be pundits are so deep in their own followings that they do not realize that Biden's messages on the protests enjoy overwhelming support from the public. It's not the same as like the MAGA bubble, but it's very much a bubble, which is interesting because, of course, lots of pushback, lots of discontent online about the Biden reaction. It's it's tepid in the face of what's going on, and both in the protests and in Gaza itself. But then on the other hand, that's kind of a good thing. It's good when the president keeps his head and stays relatively mellow in the face of potential violence and, of course, outright war overseas. So. But it's election season, and there's a protest going on, and people have demands, and they want to see passion and action, and that's not always really going to be the result when you're turning to the White House for that response. But yeah, we ought to perhaps take a look at the Morning Consult reporting and see what that looks like. I've got it here. We'll open it up and read through. Despite concerns about war, and I mean, that's certainly widespread. I think concern about the war has overwhelming support. Many voters would ban pro-Palestinian campus protests. 47% of voters say colleges should prohibit anti-Gaza war demonstrations. It's not demonstrations in general, but specifically pro-Palestinian and anti-Gaza war. Eli Yokley is responsible for the write-up. This from 2 days ago, May 1st. The key takeaways, the bullet points up here, that's what we really need to look at. Amid a wave of campus protests, more voters than not, and by far at that, 47 to 30, believe colleges and universities should ban pro-Palestinian demonstrations on campus, higher than the 41% who said the same of pro-Israeli demonstrations. So there's a pretty strong contingent for let's just not have any of this going on college campuses, which is also sort of like, do you know what happens at college camp? Do you know what's actually going on in that section of the world? Have you looked in on that lately? Anyway, there's also less than 2 in 5 voters. That's what, 40%? Less than 40%. Less than 2 in 5 voters support universities divesting from Israeli companies or businesses that profit from the war. Support for divestment is highest among those with postgraduate degrees and those from the wealthiest households, the kind of people often targeted by college donation requests. So there is that. So the college administrators are dealing with their own universe of respondents, I'm sure. But it seems like the President of the United States, dealing with the respondents, the population and the voting population in general, is more or less in the right place, even if not as a moral question necessarily, but as an electoral question. That may change, and, he's going to have some interest in watching the polls and shifting with them as necessary. And by the way, the Biden administration has been very adept at shifting to keep up with various and sundry, as Greg would say, demands made, or rather more vaguely than they're being made here in the protest context, but interests of the younger voting contingent. And, not unlike not dissimilar to the case with lots of protest blocks, let's say. It's very rare that you're going to get to a point where people say, yes, okay, I'm satisfied with that. But I'm just sort of thinking back on time spent on, Biden, he's not doing anything. He won't acknowledge climate change, and he won't do anything about climate change. Well, he always is acknowledging it. And then coming out of the pandemic, we find one of the largest federal investments in climate-focused investment that has ever been made. Well, screw that. The point is, he won't act on student loans. He's been very stingy on student loan forgiveness, and then little by little, and then eventually a large wave of enormous impact and forgiveness of student debt. Yeah, well, that's nothing, because when are we going to modernize our weed laws in this country? It's crazy that they keep insisting that it's against federal law. So many states have legalized it. When are we going to get with the times? And then the ball has started rolling on that as well, not only legislatively, but by executive order, asking the DOJ to reevaluate the way it regards marijuana charges in the federal criminal system. That's not a done deal by any means, but, well, why won't he even start? Oh, he is starting on that. Well, in that case, what about Israel and Gaza? Well, okay, so for right now, he's not satisfying you, but he didn't satisfy you on either of these things inside of the 6-hour time frame you gave him last time, but he came around in the end. There's an election coming. That's kind of the way these things work. I guess wait and see. But he's showed up at 4 or 5 other of these alleged crises and addressed it adequately. Not for your tastes, of course. Sometimes people just, like we say, won't take yes for an answer. We'll see whether it happens in this context. Anyway, so where were we? Right, less than 2 in 5 voters actually support this idea of divestment. And among those who do support the idea of investment, though, the college presidents are dealing with the fact that they are among the donor class. So, well, you're going to have to deal with your own universe there, and the President of the United States with the broader universe. Our latest monthly tracking, Morning Consult continues, of U.S. voter sentiment about the Israel-Hamas war, meanwhile, shows continued sympathy for both Israel and Palestinian civilians. As well, I think probably civilians in both cases. You could read that one of two ways. It doesn't say Israel. It says Israeli. So sympathy for both Israeli and Palestinian civilians, and that's easily understandable, as well as high support for humanitarian relief for the war-torn people and a ceasefire. And yeah, the ceasefire is definitely a complicated situation, but generally speaking, ask people, do you want a war to stop? Yeah, sure. That means you want a ceasefire, right? Yes. Under what conditions? Well, don't bother me with that. That's too complicated and could ruin the whole thing, and we might end up not agreeing to the ceasefire. But the idea of a ceasefire certainly increasingly popular, and if you're asking in this sort of context. Anyway, just a reminder that our progressive bubble is not necessarily an accurate reflection of what the rest of the country is thinking, to the extent that they're thinking anything at all. Sometimes they just skip over the whole thing entirely. All right, let's see. A few other things that appear of importance, and some other things I just need to click on to remind myself of what the hell they were about. Okay, that's not a news item, but an interesting item nonetheless. And this being Friday, we may get around to it. Oh, yes, you know what I wanted to tell you? Maybe in the few minutes before the first break. I wanted to return to that Media Matters piece about the Tradwife idea, the Tradwife content that was being used as a stalking horse, I guess, essentially by right-wing conspiracy theory. And remind everybody that, like, as we were saying, this is one of several sort of social media content verticals that have evidenced this interest in slipping in right-wing talking points, propaganda, conspiracy theory, etc. Years ago, we read about how the gamer community was recognized by Steve Bannon as a potent force for slipping in political radicalization. We heard, I guess, in the pandemic, height of the pandemic era, how alternative health influencers were likewise using their platforms to slip in anti-vax propaganda, and then just general distrust of government, no matter what it has to do with, whether in the health area or otherwise, and radicalizing people that way through, being, look, I just want to be a mindfulness and yoga practitioner and follow my favorite influencer, and then all of a sudden I was not vaccinating my kids and drinking raw milk. Anyway, the Tradwife space appears to be following much the same trajectory, and that was of interest. But we didn't read all the way through the piece, and we don't actually need to make it all the way to the end. Most of the end of the article is about the methodologies and definitions that they used in conducting their study. How did they classify different types of content? What qualifies as a Tradwife content channel at all in the first place? Anyway, this was all very interesting, and there was discussion here. There was one particular influencer who was mentioned toward the end here. And if we can get back to that, there was a tidbit that just at the point where we cut off for the day, I just missed being able to add this. But yes, there was the right-wing media, it mentions here, have also embraced one of TikTok's most popular Tradwife influencers. This was the woman by the name of Estee Williams. It's Estee. And I guess, what do they say? That's Estee Lauder when they say that, right? Here comes our break, so let's try and squeeze it in. Estee Williams has appeared on Fox News, OAN, and the Daily Wire to lament about the attack on traditional values. Oh no. We're all very sad about that one. But here's the interesting part here. If we can scroll down here. Williams has used her since nuked Twitter account to spread anti-trans bigotry, opposition to sending women to college at age 18, and disturbing messages like, quote, any wife who denies her husband intimacy is acting against her marriage. Well, that seems like a rather personal intrusion, but at any rate, here's the part that I really thought was interesting. Notably, Williams' sister is Rudy Giuliani's former spokesperson and, according to her Twitter bio, Turning Point USA ambassador Christiane Allen. Remember her? Wow. Hi everybody, it's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and patreon.com, patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. So I am warned that, as I have heard in the past, occasionally, sometimes the audio becomes inaudible as we head towards break on the live stream. So did you catch what I had to squeeze in at the end there? The whole reason of coming back to this was to note that this Estee Williams Tradwife influencer is the sister of Rudy Giuliani's former spokesperson and now allegedly Turning Point USA ambassador, whatever that even means, Christiane Allen. And we never really did learn, I don't think, how to pronounce that name. But you remember her as she was like this very odd, I don't know what, this odd figure, this young girl who kind of came out of nowhere and got, left college for an internship with Rudy Giuliani and just sort of waltzed into it. No one really knew where she came from or why she had achieved this position, though she was an attractive young woman, and all of a sudden Rudy Giuliani insisted on keeping her in tow wherever he went, and it didn't last forever. But she also had those weird internship with like an attorney in Long Island for some reason. She's from Virginia, and just, I don't know, she had this very weird, inexplicable background. I'm sure that there's a story that could be weaved together that would help make it make sense, but I don't know if it would be all that familiar a trajectory or path to, well, normies out there. But anyway, I guess the whole family is in on the grift somewhere, and they all realized that they could live a high-flying lifestyle by working in right-wing influencer spaces. So there you go. There's a little extra note here. TP, that is Turning Points USA, hosts a Young Women's Leadership Summit that pushes high school and college-age girls to give up their career ambitions and instead become mothers and wives. How nice. Anyway, it all led me to the conclusion yesterday, both here, I think, and on social media, that, look, this Tradwife content is grooming. It just is. And its biggest fans in this country are supposedly the biggest grooming haters we've got out there. And that's, of course, because they are opposed to the grooming of other people in order to, I don't know, in their mind, they view this as grooming being done by LGBTQ and folks, and that they're, I don't know what else to say, but they're opposed to grooming by LGBTQ people, but not opposed to grooming by themselves, because of course that's sexual satisfaction for them, and that's the most important thing in their world. And that kind of grooming is okay. I mean, I don't know how else to see it. To say that the entirety of the philosophy is to teach young women that they should dress a certain way, look a certain way, and give up all career ambitions to become literally sexually subservient cooks for largely men. Probably incels would be kind of into it as well. Like, I can't seem to make these girls like me. What if we just programmed girls to think that liberation and freedom meant becoming sexually subservient to me who can't get a girlfriend? Well, that would solve my problems. Well, that's grooming for you. And I don't see any other way of looking at it, quite honestly. And then, of course, now that I'm thinking about it and taking a look at some of the most successful Tradwife influencers, they're very formulaic, not only in their approach to life in general, but in the way they portray themselves. They all have a certain look, which, by the way, just happens to be kind of calculated to the sort of look that the people who would be interested in raising up a class of subservient sex slaves and cooks might enjoy. But there you have it. And I don't know. I find it very interesting. And also, I guess I'm just thinking, like, well, you might be wondering, well, what's in it for the women? And I'm not 100% sure. And in some cases, they might genuinely be seeking this. I don't know. People have different tastes. I can't tell you why they do or whether they're a good idea or not, but they apparently do. But also, I wouldn't be terribly surprised if, you're never going to believe this one, but I think that some of these people might be hypocrites. Yeah. I mean, it's entirely possible. I'm just sort of thinking, as I'm looking at the way they dress and the things that they spend their time doing in the videos, and its traditional values and family and America and patriotism. It's also largely, pretty large overlap with, say, the agenda of Moms for Liberty. And then we found out that the big mockers behind Moms for Liberty were themselves, we're all for traditional values and traditional family structure, et cetera, except for us, we have a three-way all the time with a favorite partner of ours who occasionally, sometimes, if I can't get there, my husband rapes her. Just whatever. And I'm beginning to wonder whether that might not be what underlies some of the influencers' interest in producing this content themselves. Who knows? I mean, there's only so much interest. If the Tradwife model were true to their, if their lives were true to the Tradwife model, well, I don't know. I don't know whether the Tradwife model obligates the husbands to be monogamous and faithful with their wives. It may very well be. Look, if my husband wants to be able to go around cheating with others, with me or without me involved, there's nothing I can do about it, and my role in life as a subservient Tradwife is to allow for that. And I don't know whether they're supposed to pretend they're upset about it or pretend that they're not. I don't know which is which. But then on the other hand, like I said, the model over on the Moms for Liberty side tells me there might very well be something in it for the Tradwife, at least the Tradwife influencers anyway, and the poor idiots they influence into trying to slave away in their own kitchens and do these same things that Tradwife influencers are able to do with tax-deductible investments in kitchens and video equipment and cooking equipment and a whole wardrobe and makeup and hair people to make them look perfect, et cetera, not available to the average person. And so therefore, whatever, maybe they get caught up in chasing this thing and then feel less than for not being able to do it. And meanwhile, they're actually living the Moms for Liberty lifestyle and enjoying it too. I suppose we can't argue with them about that. Amanda Marcotte has written a considerable amount about this, actually. And I mentioned that Tradwife stuff is something that she's has really had an eye on. I think in addition to a couple of good articles about it and some excellent expose type articles about it, pointing out that, the lifestyle of an influencer in general, but in particular with these Tradwife influencers, has nothing whatsoever to do with the image they're portraying. They're, I guess, at bottom, the point she was making here, and she's written extensively on it, and I think she may even be working on or have recently completed an entire book on the subject. As you can well imagine, this is really right up her alley here, but she's pointing out the hypocrisy of it, that the whole philosophy, the whole Tradwife philosophy is give up your career to become a subservient housewife to your husband. But these women have, of course, made very successful careers out of insisting that everybody else needs to give up their career. It's their career to tell you to give up your career, and they're doing great with it. And, because it's traditional homemaking stuff too, a lot of the equipment that they use is donated to them by the manufacturers. I need you to test out this KitchenAid thing and use the pasta maker attachment as is being used here in this photos illustrating the Media Matters piece. It shows up for free, and then the clothing, and it's a sponsorship deal, and they have subscribers, and they're living this fantastic lifestyle because of their career, which is all dedicated to telling you to give up your career, which I don't know. I don't know what they get out of it, but they are getting paid. So, it's a little bit of it's a bit of a hypocrisy situation here. Anyway, I really just wanted to get back to tell you that Christiane Allen was somehow related to this, a sister of this, one of these influencers. I find that amazing that, they all find their way into the grift no matter what. All right, let's see. A couple of other things in pocket. Oh, as a matter of fact, today being Friday would be a great day to run a short piece, which we've been sitting on again for some time, from Rosalyn MacGregor, who filed this with us all the way back in late March. It's now May. The entire month of April has passed in between. This one taking us back to Ottawa County, humble Ottawa County, where so many of these storylines have their start. This a different piece here about a local Ottawa Impact affiliated person making a bid for higher office, I think. Let's run this piece and catch up with this, thanks to Rosalyn MacGregor.
Good morning, David. Today's segment is a little palate cleanser, if you will, about the continuing saga in Michigan's Ottawa County government. It turns out that Ottawa County's controversial executive administrative aide, Jordan Epperson, has decided to run for a Michigan House seat on the other side of the state. Epperson has filed to run as a state representative in St. Clair County. For those unfamiliar with Michigan, Ottawa County is on the west shore, or Lake Michigan side. St. Clair County is located on the east shore, or Lake Huron side. Epperson, 23, has filed to run as a Republican in the state's 64th district, which includes Worth Township in Sanilac County and the city of Port Huron, plus parts of the city of St. Clair, the townships of Birchville, Clyde, Fort Gratiot, Grant, Kimball, and Marysville, and parts of St. Clair Township. Epperson first made headlines in Ottawa County when he was hired in August to serve as Ottawa County Administrator John Gibbs's executive aide. After hiring Epperson in August, Gibbs was accused of age discrimination after a more qualified finalist for the position went unselected. That finalist, Ryan Kimball, filed a lawsuit against Gibbs and Ottawa County in October. The case remains ongoing. Epperson is a recent graduate of Michigan State University with a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. After the hiring was publicized, Gibbs refused to name who he'd hired during the regular commission meeting to, quote, avoid a public spectacle, unquote. Several residents voiced disdain over Epperson's social media history. Epperson made his Facebook account private and deleted his Twitter account days after his hiring was reported, but not before dozens of screenshots of his previous social media posts had been captured, including several controversial comments about women and immigrants, among other topics. That Epperson was seeking public office was first revealed in a recent interview with Gibbs by independent journalist Scott McMahon in the Bigger Truth podcast. When McMahon asked why Epperson was hired, Gibbs said he came, quote, highly recommended, unquote, by individuals involved in state government. According to his resume, Epperson worked as a part-time aide for Representative Matt Maddock, one of several lawmakers active in Michigan's, quote, Grand New Party, a far-right offshoot of the Republican Party. Most recently, Epperson worked as a legislative aide for Northern Michigan State Rep. Neil Frisk, also a GNP supporter. Prior to his time with Maddock and Frisk, Epperson also has ties to several prominent far-right Michigan Republicans, including former MyGOP co-chair Michonne Maddock, one of 16 people charged for allegedly acting as a false elector in the 2020 presidential election. The 64th district is currently represented by Republican Andrew Beeler, who opted not to run for re-election. Quote, I don't think politics is ever meant to be anybody's career, Beeler said. That's certainly what our founders thought, and so I think the same is true for me. I've served 2 terms, and I'm going to let somebody else have a shot at it. Unquote. Beeler says he's keeping his options open. Quote, I don't think it's the end of politics for me altogether. Certainly, I am open to having the opportunity to serve the community again, he said. Dan Lauer's seat is open in 2026. He'll be term limited, and I'll be able to do 2 full terms in the Senate. That's certainly an interest to me. So there you have it, David, with a quick update on what's going on in Michigan.
All right. Thanks, Rosalyn. I'm sorry we sat on that one for so long, but at least we've gotten it on the record here, and wise to keep an eye on what grows out of the Ottawa County weirdness and watching it metastasize as might happen. But thanks for the update. Let's see. I did use the opportunity to find what Amanda Marcotte had written, and I took a quick look just through the search engines, and she's been on the case, as I said, for quite some time, and I think it was her latest entry at Slate Salon on the subject that I was thinking of, where she was really looking into sort of the structure and of this influencer space and the hypocrisy, of course, of demanding that as a philosophy everyone else give up their careers, but that they had in fact built quite lucrative careers. And maybe we ought to run through that while we're sort of on the subject, and then we can spend hour 2 going further afield. But always worth sharing Amanda's thoughts on these things. This goes back a ways to, I think, late March. Where do they put the dates on this? There it is. Oh, early March even. March 8th. Earlier even than Rosalyn MacGregor's piece here. So a bit of a time machine. Going back 2 months here. Tradwives offer an alluring vision of right-wing Christianity. Online warriors are fighting back. I'd like to find out about who's fighting back and why and on what basis, and see if we can get involved there. The hashtag Fundy Snark movement battles to deconstruct those picture-perfect images of Christian social media. All right, I can get behind that. As social media stunts go, the piece begins, it's hard to top this one. Give birth to your 8th child at age 33. That's quite a stunt, and I really think that you should maybe rethink your life if you're doing it for clicks, but I hope that's not actually the case. Then, on top of that, just 2 weeks later, compete in a beauty pageant, complete with a swimsuit competition. Hannah Neelman, Neeleman, Hannah Neelman, a momfluencer, oh boy, who has nearly 9 million followers for her Instagram account, Ballerina Farm, did just that in January, strutting the Mrs. World pageant after winning the Mrs. America pageant last year. Now, just by way of I gave some interesting, I think, influence there to, or emphasis there to the way I read the name of her Instagram account. Now, I don't know whether is she a ballerina herself, and she now in her Tradwife role is raising a large brood of children on a farm, which, lots of people love. That's sort of the picture-perfect idea, American ideal, living out on the farm, even if it's not really or necessarily a working farm, but whatever. And 8 kids, etc. You need space, right? Whatever. But I was just sort of thinking, is she the ballerina and this is her farm? Like Ballerina Farm? Or is it like, I have 8 kids and I'm turning them all into ballerinas and I'm breeding out. This is a ballerina farm. I'm raising a flock of ballerina. I'm not really sure. I guess we'll find out after reading a little further into it. Anyway, her photos and, oh yes, right. She went on to the Mrs. World pageant after winning the Mrs. America pageant last year. And in a quote from her, "I don't think there's any shame in showing I just had a baby," Neelman told the New York Times. There isn't, of course. "Like, I'm not going to have a perfectly flat stomach." Okay, that's terrific, wonderful, except seems like it's kind of a part of a weird plot of sorts here. Anyway, what do we got? Her videos and photos of the event suggest that whatever tummy imperfections she was confessing to, they were not visible to the naked eye. This combination of faux humility and orchestrated perfection is intoxicating to some, infuriating to others, and confusing to many. But what's indisputable is that it's hard to look away. It's how this Utah resident built an online following of millions for a social media account that purports to portray the humble life of a former ballerina turned farm wife. It's fair to note that her family's financial security, though, has other sources. Like, can you turn from ballerina to humble farm wife and raise 8 kids, have 8 kids before you're 33, and then have the team behind you that it takes to do something like compete in and win the Mrs. America pageant and go on to Mrs. World? You can if your father-in-law, for instance, is the founder of JetBlue. Like, you might have access to several $1 million to blow on whatever stupid project you think is worth your time. And if it just doesn't work out and it turns out that most Americans are not interested in following the day-to-day life and hairstylings and cooking stylings of a woman whose main claim to fame is, I look pretty good and I have 8 kids and something. Well, I'm always shocked that anybody can find interest for anything in social media. But then again, I'm always shocked. Well, how come there's so many people interested in hearing what I have to say about these articles? Well, it's not 9 million, but it's still pretty good, right? There's a lot of people in the world, and But mostly, generally speaking, if you are putting out videos and you look like a pageant winner does, well, you're going to get eyeballs. Anyway, Neilman, with her bucolic images of grazing cattle and her sourdough recipes, is an especially successful example of a growing industry of social media influencers, often described as trad, for traditional, or as momfluencers, and beige moms. I'm not really sure about the beige mom thing, but that for the... Oh, okay. It's for the minimalist aesthetic that dominates this online universe. Some of these influencers are married couples, and some are just women, but they all sell variations of the same fantasy. A simple but luxurious life with a loving husband and charming children, all for the low, low price of abandoning one's ambitions of a career outside the home. Okay, it took me a while to get that sentence out, but there you have it. Feminist critics like Sarah Peterson, Anne Helen Peterson, no relation to Sarah Peterson, and Anna North have built an impressive body of social criticism unveiling the cynical blend of capitalism, gender politics, and plain old dishonesty of the momfluencer enterprise. Neilman's feed, for example, never shows us her farm workers, her kid's full-time teacher, her babysitters, or her personal assistant, right? She's the mom who does it all, except she has an army of people who actually do it for her. What is less often discussed in these critiques is the way many of these online influencers also function as propaganda outlets for the Christian right, though that's how we entered the discussion just yesterday. There's another group of whistleblowers, however, who are working to confront what they see as a deeply misleading portrayal of life inside right-wing religion in general, I guess. It's an amorphous but devoted collection of former evangelicals, former members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, aka the Mormons, and other critics of the Christian right. What unites them is the desire to call BS. Let's have Greg call BS.
That's bullshit.
That's right. Call BS on the idyllic self-portrayal of conservative Christian influencers, and they're fighting on the same turf as their adversaries, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Spotify. So what's the general premise here? That's the title of the next section. You could have this too, if you just submit to your husband. That'll rub some people the wrong way. It's hard to keep track of the metastasizing numbers of Christian influencers peddling beatific, is that right, images of their family lives online. Estee Williams, we just heard about her, Nara Smith, Cynthia Lowen, Natalie Bennett, and Mrs. Midwest, just to name a few. These women, and occasionally couples, often rack up followers in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, despite or because of a depressing sameness in their presentation. Magazine perfect kitchens and gardens, rows of mostly blonde children, long layered haircuts ranging from corn silk blonde all the way to light brown with blonde highlights. They lead with the beautiful babies and the pretty families and the obedient children, explained Tia Levings, a former fundamentalist who now releases TikTok and Instagram videos exposing what's known as Christian patriarchy. It's a very wholesome image of function and beauty and order. And of course, if you can edit the videos, you can create that for yourself, I guess. You won't really be living it, but you can make everyone else think so and pay you money to learn how. She continued, in chaotic times, people crave order. They crave fundamentalism. They want formulas. It's seductive, said Matthias Roberts, a therapist who helps people recover from religious trauma. I didn't even know that was a niche. It offers certainty and belonging, which are the core to what we need as humans. Dr. Laura Anderson, a therapist who herself left the fundamentalist sect and now helps others who are leaving, said she had longed for that sense of stability and argued that fundamentalism is a coping mechanism for a deregulated nervous system. But what's underneath the photos, she said, is not reality. In one sense, there's nothing new about Christian influencers, explained Blake Chastain, who hosts the Ex-Evangelical podcast. Christian right YouTubers and TikTokers, he said, are continuing a century-old alternative media ecosystem. Evangelicals have always seized whatever the media was at the time. Jennifer Bryant of the YouTube channel Fundy Fridays said, before you had radio, and before they had radio, they were doing tent revivals. Then they got started on TV. Now it's on TikTok. Christian social media differs from those previous efforts in two principal ways. The omnipresent nature of the internet means that online personalities can have a wider reach and more influence than even the biggest televangelist of the past. Bradley Onishi, a former evangelical minister who now hosts the Straight White American Jesus podcast, wow, described how the rabbit hole effect of social media leads people to consume exponentially more of this content than they ever could in the past. That's definitely true. Even in his hardcore Christian youth, Onishi said he might go to church 3 times a week and in between visit a Christian bookstore and listen to Christian radio. Now, he argued, by the time a believer gets to church on Sunday morning, they've digested 100 hours of influencers, podcasts, pundits, talking heads, Fox News, and YouTube. Online Christianity has, for many, totally overwhelmed what's on offer from a pastor that you see once or twice a week. More than 40% of self-described evangelicals rarely or never attend church. As Ruth Graham, I mean, why not? You know, homeschool your kids, you can home church yourself, I guess, right? As Ruth Graham and Charles Homans reported for the New York Times, these unchurched Christians build their spiritual lives around podcasts and YouTube channels that discuss politics from a right-wing and sometimes Christian worldview. Secondly, social media influencers who present themselves as lifestyle gurus aimed largely at women don't necessarily foreground religion. Their primary focus is guidance on parenting, housekeeping, sexuality, and being more attractive to men. They're the marketing department, Bryant said. Their job is to look pretty and advertise how amazing my life is, with the underlying pitch, you could have this too if you just submit to your husband. They will do all this normal influencer stuff. McKay Forsyth, who hosts a popular ex-Mormon YouTube channel, said, then they'll just slip in a Sunday photo of them going to church. Fundamentalism is really good at taking what we love in our hearts and using it to exploit us, Levings said. Well, that is very interesting. There's a bit more to it, and we'll read through a little bit more of it because it's kind of interesting, and then maybe even go even further afield. It being a Friday and all, we have license to do that. The next section coming up sounds interesting. I know your Bible way better than you. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's continue on reading through Amanda Marcotte's early March piece about Tradwives and what those who are pushing back against them online find to be the truth of their existence and what they're trying to do in the influencer space. As I said, this next section, intriguingly titled, I Know Your Bible Way Better Than You. Let's find out who's speaking and why. Here, this veneer of polished perfection is increasingly under attack by social media competitors who want to tell a different story about what's going on behind all those family photos and lovely landscapes. The only way to debunk something that is so pretty and so attractive and so comforting, Levings said, is for people who've actually lived it to share their stories. I'm always interested in the background stories here. Although it does have, as I was reading it there, I'm like, there's a little ring to why you gotta be such a spoiler. But of course, if you're mixing it with right-wing Christian fundamentalist or even white supremacist content, well, you're going to have to spoil that at some point for the good of the country. For a higher law, to borrow from that other op-ed yesterday that people were knocking. The people doing this work often call themselves ex-evangelicals or ex-Mos, M-O-S, ex-Mos, for former members of the Latter-day Saints, Mormon, I guess. Some call their campaign, hashtag, of course, Fundy Snark, a phrase that apparently launched on Reddit and is now a common hashtag on Instagram or TikTok. A more serious term is deconstructor, derived from the deconstruction concept pioneered by philosopher Jacques Derrida. Hope I'm pronouncing that even close to correctly. Originally, that meant exploring the dynamic relationship between a text, which could be writing, visual art, film, or something else, and its social context. For the anti-fundamentalist movement, it's become a favored term to describe the process of unlearning what they see as the toxic and unhealthy views enforced by conservative religion. Maybe it's a big leap to link 20th century European philosophy to people who make YouTube videos mocking tradwives. Spend enough time with the fundy snarkers, though, and it starts to make sense. Although that's probably true of any influencer, I guess. Even the bad kind. Authoritarian religious leaders push the notion, for instance, that the Bible is literal truth, and there's only one correct reading. Through music, storytelling, and of course humor, the snarkers undercut that certainty, arguing that such texts are being selectively interpreted to suit the political and social goals of fundamentalists. What?
No!
Yes, in fact, that's actually true. That is how this works. Well, she's quite right about that. Anti-fundamentalist influencers who spoke to Salon, that is to say to her, almost universally described their community as one grappling with massive trauma inflicted by conservative religion. At the same time, an irresistibly infectious sense of fun informs their debunking of conservative Christian ideas. It's so liberating, not only to question, but to laugh, said journalist Sarah Stankorb, the author of Disobedient Women. Why don't Mormon influencers wear their garments? Asks one popular video by Morkay Forsyth and his wife, Jordan. The video is an amusing explanation of what the magical underwear, as people sometimes call it, worn by Latter-day Saints actually is. I don't love that formulation. I find it weird to isolate and pick out one particular form of religious garb, considering how much otherwise objectively dumb-looking religious garb is worn by everyone else. But this is a thing, and there are some garments of some kind. How come they aren't worn in the videos? I imagine they're trying to, normalize themselves there and be normie-looking. Although, I think you can cover them up just fine, and people are none the wiser. But all right, let's see what they have to say here. Why don't Mormon influencers wear their garments? So let's see. The garments that cover the body from shoulder to mid-thigh, the Forsyths explained, are mandatory for all adult members of the church, which probably turns a blind eye to influencers who show up online in miniskirts and tank tops, serving as attractive, relatable symbols of their faith. So I guess if you're out there luring people into the church, ultimately that's good enough to override the fact that you're not wearing your mandatory garments. But if people actually join the church, McKay Forsyth said, they will find the garments are not optional. It's just an effort to sell a more palatable version of Mormonism and get people started down their high-demand religion path. Karen Alea, who hosts the podcast Deconversion Therapy, told Salon that she and her co-host, known only as Bonnie, wanted to share the funny and odd experiences that they and others like them had growing up as Christians. One listener described how, as a child, he was finally given the stuffed Smurf he'd longed for, only to see it burned in a church bonfire, targeting demonic influences. He saw Papa Smurf flying over his head into the fire, Alea said, followed by a cloud of blue toxic smoke. I don't know how funny that is. Levings makes videos recounting the horrors of the quiverful life. That's definitely something I've heard Amanda speak and write about before. But watching them is hardly a death march. They're often sarcastic and focused on the weirder details of her former life, such as being told that girls and women never need haircuts. Sure, why not? Fundy Fridays started off as a channel where Jen Bryant did her makeup on camera while telling the backstory of some famous or influential fundamentalist. If that sounds like a bizarre juxtaposition, it worked brilliantly on YouTube, creating an atmosphere of intimacy. She no longer does her makeup in public view, although she still shows up with enviably colorful looks. Now, she and her husband, James Bryant, bring a mix of research, clever editing, and their personal charm to bear in a series of videos meant to capture what James calls the best and the worst of Christianity. That, of course, that sounds like a big project. That, of course, entails a lot of dunking on Christian influencers and revealing the less than godly motivations that drive lucrative online ministries. In one recent video, Kat Von D is Christian now. That's the name of the episode, I guess. Jen Bryant recounted how the famous tattoo artist and makeup peddler rebranded herself as a Christian after losing fans and a sponsorship deal amid allegations of racism and anti-vaccine views. I guess that was happening in the alternative, if not health, alternative lifestyle scene. And then you go anti-vax, although plenty of people were doing that, start to lose normie interest. So, all right, reinvent yourself as a born-again Christian. Jen Bryant points out that this Christian rebrand brought Von D to an audience with different standards than the secular world, where marrying a guy with a swastika tattoo is frowned upon. But I guess she found a world where it was okay. There's a low, low point of entry to the Christian influencer world, James Bryant said. As long as you're like, I'm saved, I found Jesus, you're going to get people who mindlessly agree with that to follow. But to keep that audience, an influencer must keep dishing out more red meat, which usually means increasingly right-wing politics. You see this pattern of them doubling down more over time in pursuit of that audience, he said. You're making yourself, ironically, more niche, since most people outside the world of conservative Christianity reject those far-right views. This new crop of anti-fundamentalists, I see, those are the mockers that we're talking about, is dramatically different from the militant and male-dominated new atheist movement that emerged early in this century. These newer and younger opponents of the religious right are more focused on social justice issues than on whether or not there's a God. Many still identify as Christians or hold other spiritual beliefs. Their focus is on fighting what they see as the widespread damage done by right-wing religion. Right-wing religion, really. Many will point out that evangelical intolerance and Christian nationalism cause problems for the rest of believing Christians by giving them a bad name. While many of this movement's prominent figures are women and LGBTQ folks, the fundy snark and deconstruction world is predominantly white. In that sense, of course, they resemble their conservative Christian rivals and peers. As Bradley Onishi points out, this sometimes means unintentionally minimizing the role that racism and white identity play in the Christian cultures they critique. But this cultural mirroring also lends the fundy snark community a major strength. They come from the world they're now attacking and bring a level of knowledge that makes their criticisms harder to ignore. I'm thinking now of the baby fundy voice or whatever it was that they were talking about how the women adopt this odd signal type of voice in making their videos. That's something that would have escaped unnoticed if they didn't know what was going on and informed us about it. You remember that one, I think, right? Well, you'll never out-evangelical me, Onishi said. I know your Bible way better than you. I can speak your language with no accent. This cultural fluency makes it easier, he said, to reach people who are still inside right-wing religion, but are trying to find a window to the outside. On the sly, Onishi said, someone like that can listen to the podcast, watch the YouTube channel, and come to understand the other ways people think and why they left. The journey Onishi describes from conservative Christianity to more skeptical circles was dramatically illustrated this week, but this, of course, would have been early March. Dav Beal, if I'm pronouncing it right, the husband of popular Christian influencer Bethany Beal of Girl Defined, I mean, I don't know these shows, but I believe it, all right, revealed that he is circling deconstruction, meaning that he's considering leaving his faith. When I try to find my identity in Christ, it just doesn't seem to work, he said in a video the couple posted. The announcement spurred a frenzy of excitement in the Fundy Snark community. There are dozens of Reddit threads about this, largely expressing the desire to welcome Beale to their side and glee that their message seems to be breaking through. Next section, sex sells. We know that. But sex sells Jesus? Hannah Nealman, she of Ballerina Farm and the beauty pageants, is no outlier with her swimsuit photos and her unfathomably toned postpartum body. It swiftly becomes apparent when one delves into the world of Tradwives and the Christian influencer content how downright sexy a lot of it is. It's not just the Latter-day Saints forgoing otherwise mandatory garments in order to pose in spandex and low-cut blouses. As I noted in a November column on Tradwife content, and I did see that one, it's hard not to get a cheesecake vibe off the chest-first photography or the TikTok videos that pretend it's normal to bake bread while dressed like a pinup. Even when Christian influencers aren't using age-old tricks to capture eyeballs by appealing to the lizard brain, it's astonishing how much of their content is about sex and romantic relationships. Indeed, that's primarily what the trad reflects. Sure, influencers go on about all manner of traditional lifestyle choices, but trad largely refers to the fundamentalist conception that what a healthy sex life should look like is heterosexual and married with overtly regressive gender roles. Deconstructors call this purity culture, and it runs much deeper than the well-documented fundamentalist obsession with controlling people's sex lives. Purity culture is also a promise that conservative Christians make to young people. If you follow the strict life path we're showing you, you'll be rewarded with true love, a beautiful family, and lots of scorching hot sex. P.S. Right? Within the bounds of marriage, of course. Unless, of course, you're moms for liberty, in which case, whatever. Within the bounds of whatever the hell you feel like. No problem. And maybe that's the case behind all of this stuff, too. You don't know until you find out later in the expose. Anyway, I don't know. Sounds pretty interesting. And it also reminds me, purity culture of, we've seen other instances of it along the way. The purity balls, the father-daughter pledge dances. And then, of course, recently finding out, not all that long ago, about Mike Johnson and his kind of odd familial practices of having pledges with his son, that they both monitor one another's internet usage to make sure that nobody's watching porn or something. Seems uncomfortable, to say the least, just to hear that, I don't know. All right. People do what they do. Anyway, this sales pitch, the article continues, let's just get back to that, goes back decades, Chastain explained, citing Elizabeth Elliot's 1984 book, Passion and Purity, a romantic account of her brief marriage to a Christian missionary who was killed in Ecuador in 1956 by members of an indigenous group he tried to convert. Well, okay. As Liz Charlotte Grant at The Revealer recently wrote, the book appeals to those hungry for romance, turning that longing into an argument for self-denial. As a young woman, Grant wrote, I loved her example of courtship, of saving yourself for ecstatic marital sex, of the hand of God directing a humble woman's love life. But, she added, it never worked for me. Other bestsellers have made similar pitches. Every Man's Battle portrays giving up masturbation as the path to a satisfying sex life. The explanatory I Kissed Dating Goodbye, which has since been rejected by its own author. That's interesting. Love and Respect by Emerson Egerich? I don't know. Argues for rigid gender roles and chastity before marriage. The rulebook of purity culture often goes beyond a ban on premarital sex to prescribing kissing and holding hands as well. Some go even further and seek to forbid all forms of dating, embracing a courtship model almost indistinguishable from an arranged marriage. The infamous Duggar family of reality TV believes in this courtship. Of course, abortion is forbidden, but in many cases, so are all forms of birth control. Therapist Laura Anderson said that when she was still a believer, the tenets of purity culture provided a sense of stability. She didn't like the restrictions, but amid the chaos of having to choose a career and life path, it felt like a life raft. If I did things this way, then I would get this reward. In the world of Christian influencers, with intense competition for audience share, things can get weird fast. Influencers use sex to get attention while also proving their purity bona fides through performative adherence to ever stricter rules. The result can be uncanny, as in videos of conventionally attractive young couples discussing whether it's okay to kiss before marriage, or when the aforementioned Bethany Beal, who built an empire by pushing abstinence before marriage, now hawks the ultimate sex course for Christian women at $169 a pop. Jeremiah Gibson, a couples therapist who hosts the Sex Evangelicals podcast with his wife and fellow therapist Julia Postema, told Salon that the sex and relationships material that dominates the Christian influencer world is a form of bait and switch. Conservative folks are less concerned about sex and more concerned about the performance of gender, he said. Sex just happens to be the vehicle they use to promote rigid gender roles. Content that promises to be about sex is really talking about a gender dynamic, Gibson said. In this worldview, being a man means you lift weights, you eat certain foods, you stuff your emotions down. Being a woman means you bake bread, you pay attention to the needs of your husband. For many people, it can be comforting to sit with these kinds of stereotypes, hoping they'll solve all your problems. But what Gibson and Postema find in their practice, they say, is that these gender scripts stop working for people. Multiple sources said this dynamic is especially pronounced among LGBTQ people, whose bodies, desires, and identities simply can't adhere to the idealized vision of purity culture. A 2023 study by the Williams Institute at UCLA found that 2/3 of LGBTQ people who were raised Christian no longer identify as Christian. Levings argues, however, that everybody who grew up in these kinds of environments experiences this pain to some degree. For deconstructors, Christian influencers focus on sex and relationships as a kind of Achilles heel, offering a crucial opportunity to tell the world that these promises of sexual bliss are empty. When people buy into purity culture, Anderson said, we have a lot of sexual dysfunction as a result. She has seen sexual pain and a lot of shame and disgust towards self in her practice, she said, along with people who define themselves as asexual because sex feels so uncomfortable. Chastain agreed that this disconnect between the sexual promises of purity culture and the messy realities of life leads many people to start questioning conservative values. People get married young and then they realize that there's a whole bunch more to marriage than just sex, he said. It often leads to a self-discovery that is a lot more painful. People struggling with that disconnect often have done so in silence and shame. Now, there's a few Google inquiries away from finding videos, podcasts, and other media from the deconstruction community that validates what they're feeling. When we've experienced trauma in a community, Roberts said, the only way to heal that is by being in community. While online spaces are no substitute for therapy or in-person community, he said, they can offer a breadth of voices that open up more options for people to find what really works for them. Freeing oneself from conventionally gendered scripts about love and sex isn't easy, Gibson said, but it can allow people to develop a sustainable happiness based on challenging each other and pushing each other. Let's see, I think we're getting toward the end here. A section entitled, They Get Really Defensive. Let's find out who and why. The conflict between Christian influencers and the anti-fundamentalist community invites an irresistible comparison to the biblical story of David and Goliath. The Christians have more money, sleeker marketing, and institutional support from their churches, while the deconstructors are a ragtag bunch of nerds broadcasting from their bedrooms. Many began with nothing more than an iPhone and a ring light, yet there are signs The Christian Goliaths are worried about their online hecklers. For one thing, various churches, faith organizations, and Christian influencers appear to have invested in search engine optimization around the term deconstruction. Typing terms like Christian deconstruction into Google's search bar returns pages of results from Christian sites with titles like The Most Dangerous Form of Deconstruction, or warnings that you can easily come out the other side a lonely and bitter person with no hope. Some sites claim to offer deconstruction content, but deliver instead bland Christian generalities, possibly concealing a more conservative agenda, a technique seen recently in the He Gets Us ads aired during the Super Bowl. People that are still within the evangelical camp, Chastain said, rarely engage with genuine ex-evangelicals, only with straw man versions. Most anti-fundamentalist influencers that spoke with Salon didn't seem worried. Many noted that they had built up audiences with little to no marketing and saw no need to echo the aggressive proselytizing of their counterparts. Most offered some version of, if we build it, they will come. Faith may require an advertising budget, they argue, but doubt sells itself. Trolls are more of an annoyance, especially those Christians who genuinely seem hurt or aggrieved by anyone who dares to criticize them. A lot of them think I'm attacking the religion, so they get really defensive, Jen Bryant said. Some of her jokes are a little mean, she admits, while saying she doesn't intend to attack anyone's faith. The Bryants, who do not come from religious backgrounds, avoid discussing theology on Fundy Fridays, focusing on the real-world harm they see caused by the bigotry or corruption of religious leaders and Christian influencers. Alea is amused by the trolls, who says she typically can't even land good insults. They can't land good insults. They'll accuse her of not being married, although she is, or say she lives at home with 3 cats. Apparently, the worst thing they can say about a woman, she jokes, is that she's single. This reveals more where modern Christianity is today. I let it display itself, she said. Some Christian influencers escalate past complaints or arguments into attempted censorship, usually through bogus copyright claims. A good deal of Fundy snark content relies on appropriating clips, images, and music from Christian influencers, which generally falls within the bounds of legal fair use, since it's deployed to comment upon, criticize, or parody a copyrighted work. But the big corporations behind social media networks are generally unwilling to adjudicate disputes between users and tend to err on the side of those who claim copyright infringement, often without bothering to investigate. Fundy Fridays nearly lost its YouTube channel in 2022 when Lawson Bates, a Christian influencer who has spun off his own empire from his relationship to the Duggar family, kept lodging copyright complaints against the Bryants. At first, the couple appealed to Bates directly, asking him to chill out about obvious parody. When that failed, they had to fight to keep their channel, which provided a full-time living by that point. Eventually, they prevailed and got reinstated, but the experience left a bad taste in their mouths. Sometimes efforts by conservative Christians to silence their critics can backfire in a fashion reminiscent of the Streisand effect. That's what happened in the case of Matthew Blake, a.k.a. Flamey Grant, a drag singer-songwriter. Blake belongs to an LGBTQ-affirming Christian church and wrote a 90s-style country pop tune called Good Day for their congregation to sing on Sunday mornings. The song is religious in a broadly appealing sense, with lyrics like, "Out of the light, I'm not gonna hide, I got a heart in the right place." Flamey tasted the ugly side of online attention when Christian nationalist influencer Sean Fucht, if I've pronounced that correctly, attacked her on Twitter, accusing Flamey of trying to force, quote, perversion on kids, somehow, and quoting a threatening Bible passage, calling for a large millstone to be hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Thanks, Bible. Flamey admitted to Salon that the incident was frightening, since Fucht is a notorious MAGA world character. Still, drag queens know how to make lemonade, she said. Instead of pulling back, Flamey went to her followers. I was like, hey, I've got this album, I've got this song. People spread the word and started downloading Good Day on Apple Music, driving the song to #1 on iTunes Christian music charts. There's no such thing as bad publicity, right? Flamey said. She recalled being a child in an evangelical family, reading criticism about the 1995 drag-centric film To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar, in Focus on the Families magazine. I didn't even realize that I was queer. I was like, I need to see this movie. Okay, getting toward the end here. Hard numbers are difficult to come by, but the fundy, snark, and deconstruction influencers believe they've seen a dramatic surge in interest in their content in recent years. Once the 2016 election cycle began, we began to see an outflux of people from high-control religion, Anderson said. Roberts agreed. There's some evidence to back that up. Ooh, I've missed a sentence here, but let's start the music and then give that sentence a try. Because of our political realities, people are realizing this world that I once existed in is not good. I want to get out. Roberts agreed. There's some evidence to back that up. Church attendance has gradually declined for decades, but took a precipitous fall after the election of Donald Trump. The COVID pandemic, which forced churches to choose between protecting their congregants by closing down or yielding to MAGA pressure to stay open, creating major rifts that have not healed. That's an interesting point, too. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. One more segment left to inform you for the weekend. Let me skip down a little bit here and get to the end and one of the last big and important points in this piece here. There may be no single greater predictor of support for Trump, it is said here, than the white evangelical identity, as Atlantic reporter and lifelong evangelical Tim Alberta makes clear in his new book, The Kingdom, the Power, and the Glory. People within that subculture are not allowed to harbor doubts about Trump. Those who do often find that they are no longer welcome in their faith communities. Anti-fundamentalists are keenly aware of how Christian influencers try to normalize far-right politics and recruit vulnerable young people. And this brings us to another area of concern. I am worried about younger men, West said, noting that trad content offers them a deceptive promise. If only the world was like this, then I would get what I deserve. And in some cases you do get what you deserve. But I'm worried here about that. It makes me think of the incel population. You know, if only the world was like this, I would be able to get the love, affection, sex that I crave and that I think I can get by watching Andrew Tate teach me that I should be disdainful of and possibly even violently brutalize women. And then I'll get what I want. And though that seems contradictory and impossible, why would they want to be with me if I treat them so poorly, if they are then led to consume content that leads them to believe that beautiful women with fabulous homemaking and cooking skills will willingly submit themselves to them if they simply signal them correctly, i.e., treat them poorly and brutalize them in order to make them acknowledge their role as submissive. Well, you know, people are going to start doing this kind of dumb stuff. Hopefully not in any great numbers, but I worry about that myself. So we've heard a bit about that, and Amanda keeps a pretty good eye on that as well. Anyway, So it's not an overnight thing, Anderson noted. You're not anti-MAGA one day and then you wake up the next day and you find yourself storming the Capitol. She called radicalization a slow fade that slowly chips away at a person's sense of self and autonomy until they find themselves deeply entrenched in far-right ideology. Maybe you even got into it thinking you were a lefty because it was alternative health and yoga that you were looking for. And then all of a sudden you found yourself, I don't know, how many otherwise originally lefty people have we found inexplicably years later with hardcore right-wing views? It's true. Jen Bryant noted that social media has created the perfect place for pipelines of radicalization because of the never-ending scroll and the promise of community that conservative influencers offer. Their job is to entice you in. They're like sirens. As extremist researcher Brian Hughes told Salon last year, individuals pursue radicalization because it meets certain social and psychological needs. There's no easy way to measure how much a counter-narrative delivered within the same social media networks can help deter people from that path. Anti-fundamentalists believe that encountering progressives, especially those who defy ugly stereotypes and are literate in internet humor, can undercut right-wing messaging and interrupt young people's journey to darker places. Social media can be a hellscape of bad faith, right-wing propaganda, and porn-inflected material. It can also be where people learn how to think, debate, and discuss ideas. In that sense, the fundy snark and deconstruction world suggest the best possibilities of the internet. I like to think of the old philosophers' dens, where it was just 20 or 30 students going back and forth, James Bryant said. These kinds of exchanges can get heated, he said, but they have a purpose. You're figuring out life. You're breaking the world down around you in those conversations. Well, that would certainly be the best that the internet has to offer. Interesting perspective, and you can always find more from Amanda Marcotte over at Salon. She's been thinking about this topic and related topics for a long time, and a good basis from which to explore the subject. All right, so speaking of things that I've been holding on to for a little while that long reads might be good for a Friday, maybe a little further afield. Here's something that... do I remember this? Yeah, here's something that my mom sent to me, as a matter of fact, that is related to a topic we've heard an awful lot about, book banning in various counties. And again, Moms for Liberty coming to the local Board of Education, insisting that they be allowed essentially to take over the decision-making about what gets to be in school libraries and what doesn't. But here, an interesting twist on the subject, which, I guess we should have anticipated by this point, but an April 24th piece, so not super old here, Kelly Jensen writing, what am I looking at? BookRiot.com, I guess about the publishing industry. Book banning county commissioners in Hanover County. Where are we? Is this, it's Hanover County, Virginia, as a matter of fact. Book banning county commissioners censor honor for Girl Scouts banned book library. I mean, you see what's happening here? How long is this article going to take us to get through? It looks like it goes in depth. But yeah, it looks like, long story short here, is that a Girl Scout Gold Award winner, I think, but a Girl Scout put together a project, as Scouts often do, putting together, they very frequently will build those little free lending libraries and just put them up all over the place. And this one was for banned books, things that have been tossed out of local libraries by, oftentimes by Moms for Liberty or Moms for Liberty types. And I guess the local board thought, well, she's done this literacy project, we'll commend her at the Board of Supervisors, Board of Commissioners, I guess, level, and then found out, oh, wait a minute, and I guess looked to rescind the award here. The Hanover County Supervisors has censored the honor that they are giving to one of their young community members. Why? Because that student's Girl Scout project is related to banned books, something that the local school board is actively engaged with, and something that commissioners themselves are currently engaged with at the public library. This section here titled Hanover County School Book Bans Lead to a Teen Girl Scout Service Project. Here's what happened. Hanover County, Virginia has become a familiar name in the book censorship world. Thankfully not that familiar to me, but anyway, in June of 2023, the district adopted a policy to combat so-called, quote, explicit books in school libraries. And we all know that there's a lot of disagreement about what that even means. And by the way, let me just find the county for you on the map and describe to you where in Virginia it lies. It is just north of Richmond. So central Virginia, not way down south or way out to the west, but I guess would be a suburban Richmond region. Just, like I said, along, it's sort of split in two east-west by I-95. So it's not the hinterlands, but it's not the most populous area, and it's not northern Virginia either. So, all right. Anyway, but it's not down in the far southwest of Virginia either. So Hanover County has had this book banning bug, apparently. The policy allows any resident to file a complaint over a book, and the decision over the book's fate lies solely in the hands of the school board, not a review committee, not the school or district administration, and not the actual professional librarians or educators in the schools. Just months after the policy was approved, 5-2 by the board. 19 books were banned at that same meeting with unanimous yes votes by the board, and by the end of 2023, over 75 books were banned from the district. The bulk of those books were by or about LGBTQ plus people. In response to the policy and removal of books, one local Girl Scout named Kate Lindley decided she knew how she could get engaged locally and work on a project that would impact her community and help her earn a gold award from the Scouts, the highest honor given. It is, in case you're not familiar, essentially the Eagle Scout rank for Girl Scouts, the gold award. So Kate created an app called the Free to Read app, which offered information about the bans and the books impacted. She then created free in-person libraries filled with banned books for anyone to access. These banned book nooks included titles banned by the school district, including This Book is Gay by Juno Dawson, Sold by Patricia McCormick, and others. The banned book nooks were placed in 2 local businesses, We Think in Ink and More Donuts, M-O-R-R, More Donuts. Books and donuts, not bad. And Kate filled several local little free libraries with banned titles as well. More Donuts reported a wave of online hate when they offered to host the project. Kate's project was documented on an Instagram account, and her story made news nationwide. On April 10th, Kate was to be recognized by the Hanover County Board of Supervisors alongside her fellow Girl Scouts who all earned their gold awards. But instead of being commended, one of the board members, Cold Harbor Supervisor Michael Hertzberg, changed the language around Kate's project for her honor. No longer was the school board and its book ban policy and practice mentioned, the very things that spurred the project itself. Upon censoring the language around the honor, the rest of the Board of Supervisors approved the changes. So you can see below they included the original proclamation to be given by the county commissioners. Originally, they were going to say, all the usual stuff. Whereas the Girl Scouts of the USA was founded, right? The Girl Scouts help build character and self-esteem and help girls become the leaders of tomorrow. And whereas Catherine Kate Lindley is a resident of the Ashland Magisterial District in Hanover County, Virginia, and is a senior at Maggie L. Walker Governor's School. On the 18th of January of 2024, Kate Lindley attained the Gold Award, the highest award granted by the Girl Scouts of the USA. Kate created the Free to Read app, identifying locations where books were available that had been banned by Hanover County Public Schools libraries. You can see how this would be embarrassing for the very same officials to say, right? Through donations from community members and authors, Kate created banned book talk totes, which are bags containing 10 to 15 copies of a title along with discussion questions. Kate also identified the need to create more permanent sources for the books and created banned book nooks located within businesses in Hanover County. The banned book nook began with 91 titles and has increased since its inception. The banned book nooks utilize a QR code checkout system to track use and supply levels. Kate also populated local Little Free libraries with banned titles. The Free to Read initiative currently has 438 books worth over $3,600, which have been donated to the banned book nooks, talk totes, and numerous Little Free libraries. Kate's efforts have been publicized through stories in the Richmond Times-Dispatch, WTVR News, and NPR/VPM, as well as through her own Free to Read Instagram page. So then going on to saying, whereas she's logged over 100 hours on the project, Hanover County Board of Supervisors fully supports the programs of Girl Scouts of the USA. Therefore, be it resolved that we, honor and laud and extol, et cetera, et cetera. They don't actually use those words, but, the congratulatory language. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Hanover County Board of Supervisors hereby extends its congratulations to Kate Lindley and acknowledges the good fortune of the county to have such an outstanding young woman as one of its citizens. Well, they had to edit this thing, and the revision reads as follows, conveniently leaving out the context of Kate's projects. Again, whereas the Girl Scouts of the USA is a good bunch of people, leaders of tomorrow, etc. It now says that Catherine Kate Lindley is a resident of Ashland Magisterial District, as it did before, senior at the Governor's School, and that she attained the Gold Award, the highest award granted by the Girl Scouts. She created a free-to-read app identifying locations where books were available outside Hanover County Public Schools libraries. Well, there's lots of places. That's not really all that interesting anymore. Through donations from community members and authors, Kate created totes containing 10 to 15 copies of a title, along with discussion questions. She also identified the need to create a more permanent source for the books and identified locations within businesses in Hanover County that agreed to house a book stand. These book nooks began with 91 titles and have increased since their inception. Back to the QR codes, etc., etc. Kate also located local Little Free libraries with the same titles, populated it with the same titles. Again, a reference to how many, the dollar value of the books. And then, she did a bunch of great things, and here you go. And be it resolved that the Hanover County Board of Supervisors extends its congratulations to Kate Lindley and acknowledges the good fortune of the county to have such an outstanding young woman as one of its citizens. That part remains the same, but the essence of the project is gone. Kate's work has been removed from its context, meaning that not only is her work being undermined by the adults who are supposed to be honoring it, but that her work will enter the historical record without noting that it was done in response to the school board's book banning. Kate created the free-to-read app identifying locations where books were available outside Hanover County Public School libraries. That has a bit of a different ring to it than Kate created the free-to-read app identifying locations where books were available that had been banned at Hanover County Public School libraries. Instead of explaining why she created the app, it sounds like she just replicated the work of the average library catalog. But it gets darker and fishier. Unfortunately for Hanover County, it isn't just the school district that earned a name for its book banning. The Hanover Public Library also found itself at the center of right-wing censorship in early March of this year, and it is impossible not to connect the censoring of this proclamation with the ongoing battle between county supervisors and the public libraries. During a toddler story time at Atlee Branch Library, one person was offended by the inclusion of Todd Parr's The Family Book, which showcases all of the ways a family can look. The idea of two same-sex parents normalized homosexuality, and that probably calls for some dramatic music. And the person took their concerns to the library board's director. The book was deemed perfectly appropriate But the individual wasn't satisfied. That individual then went to Chickahominy District Supervisor Danielle Floyd, who read the email aloud at the next library board meeting held on February 28th. And here it is. My wife and daughter attended the toddler story time at the Atlee branch on 2/14/24. They should have been home for Valentine's Day, damn it. Where a library employee read The Family Book, which depicts a same-sex couple. When my wife realized this content, she quietly removed her daughter from the story time. He followed up to file a complaint with T. Shepley, the regional library director, that the book contained content that normalized homosexuality, and did not receive an encouraging response or an apology from the director. T. Shepley followed up on 2/16/24 and stated the content of the book was age-appropriate and reflective of the community. T. Shepley argued that the content did not have anything to do with sexual orientation, and the two fathers could have been from a blended family. The lack of concern from PRL, the libraries, on whether the content of their toddler storytime books offends their community members is disappointing. The interactions with the library and the director have not been helpful or compassionate. Family and friends are skeptical of attending future events for fear of having to explain inappropriate topics that are being pushed in our libraries to our young children. Looking forward to see how Hanover County and PRL will move forward with this. Are they really looking forward to it? Floyd then shared the same talking points of those sympathetic to book banning across the country, that the library had a history of promoting sexually explicit books and being anti-police, among other things, probably pro-terrorist because reasons. Floyd requested that the libraries not ban the books, but make toddler storytime books available prior to the storytime in order for families to decide whether or not they should attend. She felt it inappropriate that the librarian pushed her agenda on the storytime attendees. Floyd attended the following library board meeting and spoke during public comment, parroting the same language about the book being inappropriate and demanding that the situation be handled. Minutes for that library board meeting are not yet available, apparently. Per the library board minutes, she stated, "Personal agendas do not need to be pushed on children, and we do not find that acceptable in Hanover County." Immediately after Floyd's public comments, the final comments after a series of pro-book banning and anti-book banning sentiments during that time, the Goodrich County Library Board Representative Barb Young introduced Floyd and fellow county administrative members to the new point of a contract for the county attorney's office. The March Library Board meeting was then canceled. Conversation about the evils of the public library were far from over. Hertzberg, the county supervisor who censored the proclamation about Kate's banned book projects, claimed the public library promoted, ready for this one, witchcraft, the occult, pornography, and sexually explicit material in the youth section, per the March 13th, 2024 County Supervisor Board meeting. The same day that Kate's commendation was edited, the April 10th County Supervisors meeting, Hanover County resident Peggy Lavender, I guess Lavender, it's not Lavender, but Lavinder, noted that something was fishy at the public library. Per the County Supervisor Board packet, Ms. Lavender spoke regarding the Pamunkey, is that right, Pamunkey? It's the original Native American tribal name there, but Pamunkey, I hope I have that right, Regional Library Board of Trustees meeting held on Tuesday the 9th of April. Ms. Lavender explained that documents were not provided to individuals prior to or at the meeting. When she questioned that, she was told that the board did not want to release that information because they felt the public would be confused. I'm confused. She continued, saying a board member did confirm that those documents need to be shared with the public in the interest of transparency. She noted that towards the end of the discussion, a proposal was put forth to revise the collection policy, and that is going to involve changing the way the library is in general. The proposal is to have an adult section, and that any book, even if it is written for a child, a teenager, a 17-year-old, if it has any sexual content in it, is going to be put in the adult section. She added that there was no consideration whether it was a sex education book that was written for young teenagers or how this restriction was going to be enforced if a teenager picked up a book from the adult section. Okay, now I'm getting the picture. Ms. Lavender is upset by this. And that's why she was upset that there was no documentation about the new policy being made available to people who were attending. I didn't know what direction she was coming from. Ms. Lavender spoke regarding book titles that received complaints, which she added was 50 maximum, I guess, okay, and suggested instead of trying to determine what the public does not want to read, the board should spend time finding out what the public does want to read. If the library does not have a title, it can be requested. She added that this is the same thing that happened with the school division, and she suggested that the board use the process developed for the school division and spend time learning what people want. She closed by asking for the board's help. It's not always the most enlightening thing to listen to a citizen presentation, not always, and reading the minutes about it usually just makes it a little more difficult to understand. The minutes of the library board meetings and agendas for upcoming meetings halted in January of 2024 somehow, despite being approved during the February meeting. As noted above, the March meeting was canceled and there are no documents related to it. However, drafts of the policy for protecting children from harmful, sexually explicit material in areas designated for minors and reconsideration of library materials are buried deeper in the library board's webpage. Both were under consideration at an April 9th meeting deemed a board working session, where no public comment was allowed. But on the agenda for the next full board meeting, to be held Wednesday, April 24th, is debating how to differentiate between middle school books and juvenile books. It appears that the library is considering subdividing books for middle schoolers, middle graders, juvenile readers, and books for young adults. The cost of this project, per board documents, is over $53,000. This emerged in part due to citizen comments from the February meeting, but also due to the library board member making statements during the January meeting that were misleading and false regarding the middle grade collection, which led back to a letter sent by the then County Board of Commissioners Chair W. Canova Peterson in April of 2023 to the public library requesting age appropriateness of materials in the section of the library should be considered to better differentiate elementary school, middle school, high school, and adult audiences. You know, the adult children. The letter came as a culmination of complaints about materials in the public library collection spanning back to at least September of 2022, when a patron brought a complaint to the board about a banned books display at the Atlee Branch Library. That patron, Christy Schumacher, is currently on the library board. Oh no. But let's go back to Hanover County Schools for a second. Supervisor Floyd and fellow County Supervisor Faye Pritchard, who was absent from the meeting where the Proclamation for K's project was censored, are currently involved in the process of selecting 2 new members of the Hanover County School Board as well. Floyd is aligned with the local right-wing group, the Hanover Patriots, who've had a hand in the policymaking that led to the banning of dozens of books in the school district. To say Commissioner Floyd or her colleagues are not in a series of conflicts of interest would be an understatement. They are not only helping determine the future of access to books in the county schools. Again, the school board gets to make that decision on whether or not the titles are banned, but they are also pulling the strings on policies at the public library, too. This is not, nor has it ever been, just the schools. Censorship bleeds across all institutions of public civic engagement and into democratic arenas. Hanover is a perfect case in point. At the end of the day, it's the work of teens like Kate who have gone through the public school system and took those lessons to create an empowering, necessary project in her own community who cannot even get recognition for that work. Where one parent can introduce several years' worth of complaints about books in the library driven by false narratives and right-wing rhetoric, the students who bear the consequences of such nonsense have their work downplayed and censored. It says a lot when a high school student learns about the importance of civic engagement in school and chooses to craft a service project to earn the highest honor for Scouts around a local issue, only to have the local government choose to erase the purpose and impact of her work. What exactly are they trying to hide? Politics are for me, not for thee. Kate will attend the County Board of Supervisors meeting which already happened, of course, on April 24th. Hope it went well. To receive her now censored commendation from the board, she plans to attend college in the fall and study computer science. The Board of Supervisors has bestowed upon me the greatest honor anyone fighting censorship and banning could receive by censoring me in my project, Lindley said in an interview with WVTF, Virginia's public radio. Want to know who you can contact about that? Those names of the county school board are listed below, and I'll give you a link to the article, of course, if you happen to be in the area, or maybe even within the state. You just want to let them know if they're ever thinking of trying to ride this infamous incident to higher office. You'll be watching. So, I don't know, just something of local interest and about something that's of local interest everywhere, really. And not just here in Virginia, but of course in any state you happen to be in. I promise you that in many cases, weirdos who spend the rest of their day making Christian momfluencer videos and assuring everybody that they live a perfect life are out there, one, not living a perfect life, and trying to make you feel like you're less than for not living up to their standards. It's a potent mix out there. And I don't know. Taking it down to the granular level, the local level, from the national and international, where we've spent most of the week, seems like a good Friday project. Time now for me to hand things over to Justice Putnam for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. He'll make it all make sense and tie it all back together again with his collection of stories from around the country and around the world, including Trump's lawyer, as you know, introduced into the court record something that Donald Trump never wanted to be made public. And I don't even know if it's what Cohen had said about him. On the rest of the menu today, Southwest Washington state farmers called on Congress to keep conservation funding in the Farm Bill. Some anti-vaxxer somewhere is going to complain that jackboot Long Beach, California officials declared a public health emergency after one person died and 9 others were hospitalized due to a tuberculosis outbreak in the city. Thought we had that one licked. And the former Republican Michigan House leader and his wife plead not guilty to misusing political funds, but we found out a little bit more about the way they've been misusing them earlier this week.
NutwordsRadio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Internationally, thousands rallied in Slovakia to protest the controversial overhaul of public broadcasting, and the head of Greece's extreme far-right Golden Dawn Party was granted conditional early release from prison. Sounds like bad news everywhere. All right, well, hang in there over the weekend. We'll see you on Monday.